Hello, I am Radagast, and this is GMOP TV's Mystic View, and I am joined by Shelley. Hello, Shelley.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
And we're going to be discussing water, but from our mystic view way of looking at things. So I think one of the ways of looking at water, and I'm going to kind of bring a little bit of a numerological perspective to it, in a way that water is made of hydrogen and oxygen. And hydrogen is number 1 on the periodic table, and oxygen is number 8 on the periodic table. So we have those two energies, the 1 and the 8. So hydrogen's the beginning. 8 corresponds to infinity, power, money, and maybe some other deities. But together they add up to 9. And 9 is the completion, or almost kind of a way, I feel, a way that nature lets you know there's something significant is there. Most angles in perfect platonic solids will add up to 9. And if the angle itself doesn't, all of the angles will resolve in the number 9. Every single platonic solid, no matter how many sides, if you add it up and reduce it to one number, it will be 9. A432 adds up to 9. 440 adds up to 8. We won't get into that. We're talking about 9. So the interesting thing is, I see in water a mystical kind of signature of number 9 showing up there, kind of speaking to its importance and how it fits in with sacred geometry, even though there's no angles to look at in water. And I think that maybe it's one of the things why that's kind of like, okay, you have no angles to measure me, but look at my atomic numbers and you'll see I kind of fit right in with the platonic solids, even though I have no form. What do you think about it as a concept?
Absolutely, because what we know from Tesla, he also was telling us, look at it's all about 3, 6, and 9. Everything in the universe can be understood through 3, 6, and 9. And the oxygen and the hydrogen, that's really a love story. You know what happens when the two of those combine? They make an entirely new body.
Mm-hmm.
And they super sand what oxygen and hydrogen is individually, just like a love story does, or like collective humanity does. Mm-hmm. The collective, we are more than the sum of our parts. And Rumi always has it right. Rumi says, let the water settle and you'll see the moon and the stars mirrored in your being. Well, it's the same with water. Water holds the signature of everything that we think. And everything that the people around you are thinking is mirrored, because water communicates like that. That's the consciousness of water.
Mm-hmm. What also
very much a love story. And 9 is completion.
Yes. Yes, it is. Little house sounds here, which of course comes with organic recording. Also, I mean, as Tesla says, 3, 6, and 9, and as we know, when water freezes, it forms crystals, and those crystals are 6-sided crystals. So there we have the 6 revealing itself, and it is really interesting that 2 gases form a liquid.
Magic.
Yes.
There's little magic happening there.
Yeah, and of course, homeopathy. Completely dependent on water as its medium to carry the energy of whatever has been shaken within the water. And then you can take that water, put it on milk tablets, and the energy of whatever was shaken in there, succussed is the technical word. And it will pick it up, remember it, and remember it well enough that even placed on a lactose tablet, it still can impart that energy to you, and is how homeopathy works for those who acknowledge that homeopathy works.
Well, Switzerland has just recently declared homeopathy as their #1 main medical treatment program. And that's just within the last week. But the universe speaks in frequency, and that's what we're talking about here, is the frequency of of the individual atoms, but also the frequency of the numbers and what that means to you. So when it comes down to homeopathy, that's exactly what we're speaking of. And we can take those little tablets with the subtle little energies embedded in them, but we can take that a step further. You can simply, in your mind, hold the energy of that homeopathy, and it will have equal or stronger effect. And I don't know if that's a secret I'm letting out that maybe the homeopaths wouldn't want shared. I'm kidding. They're all about your health, our family. They're all about your health.
Well, even with Bach flower remedies, which are the well-known flower remedies. I mean, there's all other kinds of flower essences, even the Flower Essence Company, based on flower essences beyond Bach's 38 flowers. But again, water is the medium. The consciousness of these flowers is transmitted into the water so that it can be transmitted into our bodies and help us. In the case of Bach flower remedies, usually it's addressing certain emotional or psychological patterns.
So what would the gem elixirs be most useful for? Because that's the same principle, is it not?
It is. The difference between gem elixirs and flower essences is flower essences are states of consciousness. Gem elixirs are very discrete lattice frameworks for kind of almost like certain cells in the liver, or maybe the liver per se. It allows us to address very specific cellular issues. Like it's actually a cellular support. So with the myriad gemstones, there's hardly a cell in our body that could not find support in the mineral world. And so any place that cells for some reason are not holding their integrity and they need to be reminded what their job is, that's what gem elixirs are for, to kind of just bring that very steady, just like we use quartz to keep time because it's dependable. Well, that's how the gem elixirs work. They're solid as a rock.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, and also I love how the Tao is always expressing itself through water.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and really that brings us into oneness, into that collective oneness. And there's many. We've all been inspired by Bruce Lee. Be like the water. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Be like the water. Why is that so famous?
Well, I personally believe because Bruce Lee being Chinese, obviously he was drawing from the Tao Te Ching, or the general concept of the Tao, and water is so much an imagery that Lao Tzu uses to describe how divine energy kind of moves through the world. And
you're not
almost
resisting.
Beg pardon?
I say, and if you're not resisting, right? If you're like the water and just allow it to flow in and flow out.
And also about the container.
Yes.
It's almost like if spirit's going to fill you, what kind of container is spirit filling?
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, anybody who's alive is alive because spirit is supporting that life. So it becomes the shape of the container, how spirit expresses itself through that personality and biological structure or biological personality.
And you know how valuable that is for us to be able to recognize or feel and know with certainty that spirit is alive in us. One who is connected to the stream of source is more powerful than millions who are not. So if just one person grasps that and then uses that for positive momentum in their life, it's going to roll out, flow out all around them.
And so, even with a body of water, if you enter it gently, there's usually no resistance. Where if you try to enter it forcefully, it's almost like it becomes like a wall.
Yes. And so that's really beautiful. I use that a lot in my teaching of how to become the water. Because if you can become the water, you can become any body that has water in it. You know, what is it? The tiger chasing you, become the tiger. All of a sudden, it's not that fearful anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If you become the water, there is so much wisdom that we can grasp, because it's just the field of consciousness that we are a part of. Okay, so we're human and water's, well, oxygen and hydrogen, but our consciousness understands each other. That oneness.
And to me, that brings it to water is very sacred.
Hmm.
That 9 signature to me is a bit of a sacred signature, which is why the Platonic solids all kind of, which is the essence of sacred geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And so 9 is like kind of that here I am. And so with water being sacred, I just feel like I just would like to speak momentarily about fracking. And when I read certain things about fracking, especially in financial news, I like to read some financial news. And one of the places I kind of go, because it's not so dry, is a place called Zero Hedge. And whenever they speak about fracking, nobody ever speaks about water degradation. And there is focus on earthquakes. And apparently right now, Oklahoma is one of the most earthquake-ridden states in the union, overtaking even California in frequency of quakes currently. But they're all in the 4.2 range, the kind of things that'll rattle your nervous system, maybe break a few dishes, but it isn't really a dangerous earthquake. But people focus on the earthquakes because it's obvious to them. What isn't obvious to them is the poisoning of billions of gallons of pure water made over millions of years, providing water for millions of people, probably hundreds of millions of people in the United States alone. And how there just doesn't really seem to be the consciousness of how precious this water is. It's almost like, well, we might be dirtying the water, but there's money to be made, as if somehow money is more important than water.
Right. So maybe we need to evaluate what is our measuring stick for our values. What is important? And how important is your money when your water's gone?
Well,
we're held together by ties inseparable, and that happens to be water.
Well, we also get to what endures. I mean, a subject that we like to bring up again, what endures. And money is not necessarily something that endures, especially the value of it, where the value of water is something that will endure. And spoiling something that is both essential and sacred is not thinking about what endures. It is certainly not taking hidden within what endures is also thinking of 7 generations ahead. Thinking of the world that our children and grandchildren are going to inherit. And do we really want to have it where our grandchildren and children can only buy water from Nestle, who's trying to take over the water of the world? Or do we want them to be able to get good water out of the ground that they happen to live on? And so this is the other thing, is it's like, oh, we're making money. Are our grandchildren and our children going to benefit from that money that we have today? There might be a question to that, but they will benefit from that water.
Well, and this is where everyone can actually be empowered and realize that they do have a say. They don't have to just crumble and let Nestle walk all over them. They can stand up. You know what? We don't have to purchase their bottles in plastic. We don't have to. That's one thing we can just do, is not, because money will speak to them by us not purchasing their product.
Well, we speak to an alternative audience. And a big part of the alternative audience is, what is the cabal doing to us lately? It's always, oh, our lives are so horrible because the cabal has done this, has done that. Now, I'm now in Virginia, but I recently moved from New York State. In New York State, fracking is banned. So there's the western southern New York, or the southern counties along the western part of New York that borders Pennsylvania, have actually spoke of seceding from New York so they could frack so they could get some money out of their backyards.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not, these people who own land in the border of Pennsylvania are not the cabal. They're your neighbors. If you live in New York, these are your neighbors, and they're the ones who are supporting the permanent degradation and making undrinkable water that is now some of the purest water on the planet. And the cabal didn't put them up to it. The cabal's just willing to offer them some money for it. And so it's not, if we're really going to rid ourselves of many of the problems on this planet, it really comes through our own consciousness, and what are we bequeathing to our children and our grandchildren? What are we bequeathing to our neighbor, who might have to drink from the same water but doesn't own the land that somebody can frack and get paid for it? And so I just really feel that the dialogue, people have to change the dialogue, that the biggest adversary is not the top. It's not the cabal, it's your neighbor. It's your neighbor who refuses to see what's going on and participates in these things, all for $1. I mean, it's not, cabal do not fly the jets that spread the chemtrails. These are your neighbors flying these jets. And so I really feel that the people who know that something is going on around them, know that something rotten is happening, need to stop blaming the cabal and start realizing that it is their neighbors. The cabal is not shooting innocent people, rogue policemen. Now, please, the word rogue means a minority. Okay? This is not a blanket statement against policemen. This is a statement against that kind of behavior. But again, who are these people? Do they live in Washington, D.C.? Do they live in the capital of your state? No, they live next to somebody who is a regular person. So,
Right.
Again, I mean, I know we're talking about water, but, when it comes to preserving our water and preserving anything that means something to us, we have to realize that much of the mischief is being made by our fellow neighbors, people who live just like us. And they say, well, I have a family to raise, but are they really thinking about that family when they do things that degrade the world? I mean, I understand you want to feed them, but what kind of world are you giving them while you're feeding them?
Right. So we need to actually take it upon ourselves to be accountable and maybe go speak with our neighbors. And just like you said, we're not blaming cabal. We're going to honor that we're speaking to water beings from a water being. And we're going to honor them and use our words just like you would bless that glass of water before you drink it. And if you don't bless your water before you drink it, just try it. Mm-hmm. Have a glass of water, give yourself a little experiential taste test. Bless one water and taste it. Don't bless the other glass of water, and you will know immediately the impact that this has. Anyways, my point is, it's not about blaming your neighbors, but we do need to have conversation about this, because otherwise we just become disempowered and we allow whatever wind happens to blow through, and Nestle is probably the wind that's going to be blowing through. Awareness and ego cannot coexist. And so I'm saying ego as a measurement. When ego is involved, it's involving a measurement, either good, bad, right, wrong. Value is money, as opposed to value gives me abundant health or abundant beauty in the streams. So the moment you become aware of the ego in you, it is strictly speaking no longer ego per se, it's a conditioned mind pattern. And we have the power to change that. It's just one thought.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've covered water fairly nicely. I think we're going to take a quick pause, as we're now something we've been doing with GMO PTV to try and get a little something in the middle of things. And then we will come back with the good news, and it might be about water, and then it might just be good news. So we'll see you all shortly, very shortly. And God bless you for now. Hello there, I'm Radagast, and I'm here in Floyd, Virginia, outside of Blue Ridge Yurts. Let's take a walk inside and see just who's doing this and how they do it. So Kathy, you're one of the proprietors, or the proprietor?
I'm partners with my friend Sharon Morley, who makes the wooden frames, and we make the covers here. This is supposed to be our welding room where we make our roofs. This is a hot wedge welder,
Okay.
and we put our fabric up here on the track, and then that runs down the track and welds it.
They still make things in America. We've seen the inside of Blue Ridge Yurts. Now we're going to start looking at a couple of the yurts. This is just the basic layout. Very well constructed, very strong. All of this is locally sourced. So now we're going to go see what a grand yurt looks like. Looks can be deceiving. This is a 30-foot diameter yurt with 10-foot walls. Regular outdoor living, grills, tables, and a real door. A kitchen. Hardwood floor. A real stove. Couches, TVs, bookshelves, a spiral staircase, a very roomy bathroom, and the guest bedroom. Here we are on the second floor. Basically, I guess a master bedroom. A 5-foot in diameter dome for letting in light. And this is a really spacious bedroom. This is what you can do in a yurt. You can live as if you were in a regular house. Chances are in many places you could put up about 5 of these or maybe even 10 of these for the price of a house. Nice way to start an intentional community. Hello and welcome back to the second part of Mystic View. And so the subject was water. And so just to we're going to go to the good news, but we're going to segue from water. And of course, Bruce Lee had spoken a bit about be like water. And I found a little article on Zen Gardener. He was going into Bruce Lee's thing, but he found some nice stuff. And of course, there's a thing called Star Water now that has been covered. And he mentions a little bit about that when he says, this incredible liquid is the basic building block of nature. It is now known even stars produce water and other heavenly bodies are rich with it. It floats about in our cosmos like life itself, all completely contrary to the dead, sterile vacuum model of space we are entrained with. It moves, it adapts, it morphs, much like the gift of the human spirit. Only wrong teaching can convince us otherwise. Experience bears this out, as does our intuition. Lao Tzu, who I mentioned earlier about the Tao, a quote from there is, water is the softest thing, yet it can penetrate mountains and earth. This shows clearly the principle of softness overcoming hardness. And in that, I see us overcoming the current iron fist that is attempting to grab this planet. And so we don't overcome that iron fist with further hardness. We overcome it with the softness by coming like water, and finding our path and allowing ourselves to flow into that path and be who we will be. And then to segue into good news starts with actually a little bit of bad news in an interesting way, is that this is from Sputnik News, and it says, fracking in Wyoming forces residents to find water elsewhere. And the Powder River Basin Resource Council said that once fracking started, there was groundwater contamination both from the wells and also from the pits, some leaks and some sort of things in the U.S. state of Wyoming. And it has provided cisterns for residents of the area where hydraulic fracturing or fracking in oil and gas wells has poisoned well water. Once fracking started, there was groundwater contamination from wells and pits, as I said earlier. The state has actually funded cistern systems for landowners to get new water sources because they can't use the groundwater anymore. Their domestic wells are polluted. So this is a case where we exchanged profit for water. Now, when we say we exchanged, did the people who no longer can drink their water, did they exchange it? No. A handful of people who would benefit from it are the ones who poisoned the water for millions of people. Although this is Wyoming, So I don't know if we have millions of people there. Some of the states are rather sparsely populated, and I think Wyoming's one of them. The state, okay, so we have that about that. So the pollution from accumulated methane was so great at one point, flames would erupt when a lighted match was placed next to a sample of well water. So the Stanford study, here's the good news, the Stanford study is likely to give fresh momentum to a nationwide effort to ban fracking, a process where water and chemicals are injected into the ground at high pressure to break apart rock formations and unlock pockets of oil and gas. The widespread use of fracking has led to an oil and gas glut in the United States. An activist claim the practice threatens drinking water. Notice they put it activist claim. When we have an example of it did do just such a thing. The practice threatens drinking water supplies throughout the United States, and some U.S. states have banned fracking as a result. I know New York is one of them. So the good news is that this study is likely to give fresh momentum to a nationwide effort to ban fracking, which should be just really seen as poisoning groundwater, to ban the poisoning of our precious groundwater. That's a ban I think we can all live with. And so that's my little bit of good news to segue into your good news, Shelley.
My good news is really happy good news, because I personally firsthand had the opportunity to experience this. As we all know, water being the universal solvent energetically can harness the power multidimensionally. So recently I was introduced to the world's most advanced technology for healing. Now we're talking healing water, healing DNA, RNA, across the board. This is the Therify device, which is now midway through a world tour. So I personally was able to be part of a demonstration and experience Therify firsthand in Calgary, Alberta. Some friends of ours were able to join the Therify demonstration in New York.
Right.
And from New York, they will be in London, Paris, Barcelona. They will be doing a large demonstration at a big event in Prague. And we will have the opportunity to tell you more about that in our next Mystic View, where we also will bring interest to the shamanic training as it applies specific to you individually. So through this device, no longer do you have to take shamanic training for those who are interested according to the shaman that happens to be teaching it. Now the shamanic training will be specific to you and what even your hidden talents and abilities and knowledge are. So that's coming up with our next Mystic View. Sham from shamanic means accessing the black hole. So I'll leave that with you as a little tease for ancestral memory, using the plasma projection through birth and through death. And the good news is this is now traveling the world and bringing awareness to that which we have always had, that understanding and that knowledge that we have always had but didn't realize we could access it.
Well, I think the shamanic awareness, I believe, is something that we need to reclaim. Science has made shamanism look like it's, flaky. They tie it into witch doctors and other, shaking of rattles, and not understanding that these people knew that we were spirit. The pre-industrial people understood us as spirit first and bodies second, and so much of their practices were tending to this. And again, as we're talking about water being, as we're at least 75% water. I believe it's higher, but it's at least 75%. Maybe the difference is people who are dehydrated are 75% water, and people who are properly hydrated will get closer to 90. But the shaking of rattles, the singing of songs, the various things like this create vibrations. And these vibrations then impact the water. And so so you can see that through vibrational adjustments that you can impact the cellular material. And there is some chance for physical healing. But the shamans weren't really trying to, quote, heal or treat bodies the way modern science does, which only treats the biology. The shamans and the spiritual people of the past kind of clearly understood that biology is not particularly meaningful without a good spirit in it. And I now find myself without my Mystic View partner, because it appears that Shelley might have lost her signal, so she'll probably be joining us as I kind of wrap up this this segment on water and the good news. But I really feel it's good news is that we're starting to really get into better vibrational techniques and understanding that we are spirit. And it is through that understanding who we really are that we can become what we are meant to be. Many people really just think of themselves as biological units, and that biological training has been, in the Western nations, has largely been to be a consumer, to sign up and subscribe to your rent, subscribe to your mortgage, subscribe to your internet bill, subscribe to your phone bill, your electric bill, your water bill. I mean, it's really, life has become a subscription to everything. And of course, that means get out there and work, because these subscriptions cost money. And so part of hello, Shelley, welcome back. And so part of what I think part of the consciousness we want to get to is that when we just look like our place on this planet has really turned us into nothing but subscribers to a contrived reality. The earth was given to us. The Creator made the earth suitable to our biology and then brought us onto the stage. And it wasn't a subscription world. So when we look around and see all the subscriptions that we need to be lined up for and maintain, usually monthly, just to be on our planet, we should realize something is not correct. And so we just we should tune in to that we live on a planet that was given to us. The planet was made for us before we were put onto it. And we would like to start eliminating the various renters of this, that, and the other thing to us. And I think the good news is that we are becoming more and more aware of this. Really good news would be when we start putting our minds together to figure out what we do next. We really can't quite just cut the umbilical cord and exist, because we haven't figured out what we do once we cut that umbilical cord. So we got, hopefully, and future mystic views, and of course the circle. Right now, our other GMOP sister program, we will be examining different ways that we can create a better world, and one that endures, and one that is closer to the one that was given to us, at least in concept, with hopefully in the future, the brilliance of our innate godness, where we behave in a godly fashion instead of an ungodly fashion. Because right now the world is run in a very ungodly fashion. And unfortunately, a lot of people who have participated in the world in an ungodly fashion have actually used books, supposedly from God, to tell us what is godly and what is not.
Yes, so join us as we return to harmonics, natural, joyful harmonics.
And become the water.
Yes.
So I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this Mystic View. And would you like to say goodbye to the people, Shelley?
Well,
for now,
I'll do it voluntarily, so in case my internet drops this call again, I'll do it quick. Join us next week. We have something really special in mind to share with you all.
All right. Thank you. And thank you all again. And God bless. See you next week.